The massive alien fleet filled the space around Earth like a dark cloud. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the enemy vessels through the main screen. Their ships were huge and sleek, made from some kind of metal that seemed to glow with its own light. Each one was 3 times bigger than any human ship. Jake had been a space captain for 15 years. He had seen many alien races and fought space pirates in the outer colonies. But he had never seen anything like this. The alien fleet had appeared without warning just hours ago. They came from the direction of the galaxy center where the Galactic Empire ruled over thousands of worlds. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," said Lieutenant Sam Phillips from her station. She was young but skilled, one of the best navigation officers in the human fleet. Her hands moved quickly over the control panel as she worked to clear up the signal. "Put it on screen?" Jake ordered. The bridge crew turned to watch as the main display changed. The image that appeared made everyone go quiet. The being on the screen was unlike anything most humans had ever seen. It was tall and seemed to be made of living crystal. Its body was translucent blue-green, and it had 4 eyes that glowed with bright yellow light. When it spoke, its voice was cold and mechanical, even through the translation system. "I am Emperor Vextara of the Galactic Empire. You will listen and obey." The creature's 4 eyes seemed to look right through the screen at Jake. "Your species has become a problem. You expand too quickly. You refuse to follow proper galactic law. You ask too many questions and make too many demands. This ends now." Jake felt his crew tense around him. Maria Santos, the ship's engineer, stopped working on her console. Tony Walsh, the communications officer, looked up from his station with worry in his eyes. Even Sam, who was usually calm under pressure, gripped her chair tighter. The Emperor continued speaking. "Humanity will surrender all military ships and weapons. You will dissolve your governments and accept placement in designated sectors under direct imperial control. Your children will be educated in our schools according to our ways. Your culture will be regulated to prevent further chaos. Your technological development will cease immediately." Admiral Lisa Carter appeared on a smaller screen beside the Emperor's image. She was the commanding officer of the entire human defense fleet. Her face was hard as stone, but Jake could see the anger in her eyes. Behind her stood the emergency council that had been called together when the alien fleet arrived. President Amy Rodriguez looked smaller than usual in her formal uniform. She was a tough woman who had led humanity through the expansion into deep space. General Paul Jackson stood at attention beside her, his military bearing perfect despite the terrible situation. Chief Scientist Helen Brooks held a datapad and was taking notes even while the Emperor spoke. "You have contributed much to galactic civilization," the Emperor admitted. "Your neural interface technology improved communication between species. Your quantum jump drives made faster travel possible for smaller races. Your medical advances saved billions of lives across many worlds. Your agricultural techniques ended hunger on 17 planets." Jake remembered all of these achievements. Humans had been part of galactic society for over a century. They had explored unknown regions of space and made first contact with dozens of alien species. Human traders had opened new shipping routes. Human doctors had worked alongside alien healers to stop plagues. Human engineers had helped build the great space stations that served as meeting places for different races. "But you are too unpredictable," the Emperor said. "You question authority. You refuse to accept limits. You create chaos wherever you go. The galaxy needs order and stability. There is no place for your kind of thinking in a properly managed civilization." The Emperor's image grew larger on the screen. "You have 72 standard hours to begin the surrender process. All human military vessels will power down their weapons and prepare for boarding. All human colonies will cease independent operations and await imperial administrators. Any resistance will be met with complete destruction." Jake looked around at his crew. These were good people who had spent their lives exploring the stars and protecting human colonies. Sam had discovered 3 new star systems during her career. Maria had designed improvements to ship engines that had saved countless lives. Tony had learned to speak 12 different alien languages so he could serve as a translator during first contact missions. You think you can survive without the Empire's protection? The Emperor continued. You are wrong. The galaxy is dangerous. There are hostile forces that only Imperial strength can hold back. Without us, you will be destroyed by the first enemy you encounter. The transmission showed images of massive space battles. Alien fleets fought against creatures that looked like living darkness. Strange ships that seemed to be made of pure energy attacked peaceful worlds. The Emperor's forces stood between these threats and the civilized galaxy. We have protected you, the Emperor said. We have given you trade partners and allies. We have shared our knowledge and welcomed you into galactic society. In return, you have brought nothing but trouble. Your independence threatens the stability we have worked for thousands of years to achieve. Admiral Carter spoke for the first time. We have served the galaxy faithfully. Human ships have fought alongside Imperial forces against every major threat. We have never broken our agreements or attacked peaceful worlds. What you call chaos, we call progress. The Emperor's eyes flashed brighter. Progress without direction is destruction. You build weapons without considering the consequences. You make alliances without understanding the bigger picture. You explore dangerous regions without proper authorization. Your actions have destabilized entire sectors. We have made mistakes, Admiral Carter admitted. But we have also solved problems that no one else could solve. We have found solutions where others saw only obstacles. We have brought different species together when they thought cooperation was impossible. No more, the Emperor said firmly. The time for human independence is over. You will submit to Imperial control or you will be removed from the galaxy entirely. There is no third option. The transmission ended and the bridge fell silent. Jake looked at his crew and saw the same expression on every face. They were afraid, but they were also angry. These people had spent their lives serving humanity and protecting the innocent. They had risked everything to explore unknown space and build a better future. Orders, sir? Sam asked quietly. Before Jake could answer, Admiral Carter's voice came through the ship's communication system. She was speaking to the entire human fleet, every ship and every crew member who was listening. All ships, this is Admiral Carter. We have received the Emperor's ultimatum. We have 72 hours to decide humanity's future. I want every captain and every crew member to think carefully about what we have heard today. Think about what it means to be human. Think about what we have built together and what we are being asked to give up. Jake knew that across the solar system, thousands of human ships were receiving the same message. From the mining stations around the outer planets to the defense platforms that protected Earth, every human in space was hearing these words. We have always believed that freedom and independence are worth fighting for, the Admiral continued. We have never bowed to tyranny or accepted limits on our potential. The Emperor calls us chaos, but we know better. We are not chaos. We are hope. The answer came from every corner of human space. It was not what Emperor Vextara expected. Instead of surrender, instead of fear, instead of desperate pleas for mercy, the humans sent a message that would change everything. Colonel Danny Miller commanded the defense platform orbiting New Texas, a colony world that had been home to 3 million humans for over 50 years. When the Emperor's ultimatum reached him, he gathered his officers in the command center. The room was filled with men and women who had spent their lives protecting the colony from pirates and hostile aliens. We have our orders, Danny told his people. But before we follow them, I want to say something. My grandfather fought in the old wars on Earth. He told me once that freedom is not something you get as a gift. It is something you take and hold on to with everything you have. We didn't crawl out of caves and cross oceans and reach for the stars just to bow down to some crystal emperor who thinks he knows what's best for us. Danny's words were recorded and transmitted throughout the human colonies. Within hours, similar messages were coming from every human settlement. The mining stations around Proxima Centauri sent word that they would rather die free than live as slaves. The agricultural worlds of the Kepler System announced that they would destroy their own crops before letting the Empire take them. Captain Sophie Williams led a patrol fleet near the Vega system when she received the Emperor's message. Her ships were small and fast, designed for scouting and rescue operations. They were no match for the massive Imperial warships, but Sophie had never backed down from a fight in her life. All ships, this is Captain Williams, we have new orders. We are not surrendering, we are not giving up. We are going home, and we are taking everyone with us. No human gets left behind. No human becomes a slave. We leave together or we die together. The response from Earth came 12 hours after the Emperor's ultimatum. President Rodriguez appeared on screens throughout human space. She stood behind her desk in the presidential office, wearing the simple blue uniform that had become her trademark. Her voice was calm but firm. Citizens of humanity, we have been given a choice. We can surrender our freedom and accept the Empire's control, or we can face destruction. But there is a third option that the Emperor did not consider. We can leave. The President's words sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Alien diplomats and traders who had been monitoring human communications could not believe what they were hearing. The humans were not going to fight. They were not going to surrender. They were simply going to walk away. The United Human Colonies formally reject the Emperor's ultimatum. We will not surrender our ships. We will not dissolve our governments. We will not place our children in Imperial schools. Instead, we will withdraw from all Imperial space within 30 days. We thank the galaxy for the opportunities we have been given, but we will not trade our freedom for safety. Emperor Vextara received the message in his throne room on the Imperial capital world. He was surrounded by advisors and military commanders who had expected the humans to collapse in fear. Instead, they were watching something unprecedented in galactic history. They cannot simply leave, the Emperor said. This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. This is a command that must be obeyed. Your Majesty, said Admiral Korath, the Empire's senior military commander, the humans appear to be serious. Our intelligence reports show massive fleet movements throughout human space. They are evacuating every colony and every outpost. Then they are fools, the Emperor replied. Let them go. The galaxy will be better off without their chaos. But even as the Emperor spoke, the galaxy was beginning to realize what was happening. The humans were not just leaving. They were taking everything with them. Every piece of technology they had shared, every trade agreement they had made, every service they had provided was being quietly withdrawn. Operation Exodus began immediately. Every human ship, from massive colony vessels to small personal craft, began moving toward human settlements. The evacuation was not chaotic or desperate. It was organized, methodical, and complete. The humans had planned for this possibility. Captain Ben Hayes coordinated the evacuation of New Geneva, one of the most important human colonies in the galaxy. The world had become a major trading hub where dozens of different species came to buy and sell goods. The city centers were filled with alien merchants and diplomats who watched in amazement as humans packed their belongings and prepared to leave. You are making a terrible mistake, said Ambassador Creolon of the Zentari Collective. He had worked with human traders for 20 years and considered many of them friends. The Emperor's protection is valuable. Where will you go? How will you survive? Engineer Carlos Mendez looked up from loading a cargo container. He had spent 10 years building the fusion reactors that powered the city. We will figure it out. We always do. The universe is a big place, and we are good at finding our way. The Zentari ambassador watched as Carlos sealed the container and marked it for transport. But you are giving up everything you have built here. Your homes, your businesses, your connections with other species. Why throw it all away? Because it was never really ours if someone else could take it away, Carlos replied. We thought we were partners in this galaxy. We thought we were building something together. But the Emperor has shown us that we were just guests who stayed too long. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. On the medical world of Sanctuary, human doctors were packing up their equipment and saying goodbye to alien colleagues. The quantum medical scanners that had revolutionized treatment for dozens of diseases were being carefully dismantled and loaded onto transport ships. Dr. Rachel Adams had spent 15 years developing new treatments for the Void Plague, a disease that had killed billions before she found the cure. Her Valderon colleague begged her to stay. "You cannot take this knowledge with you. Too many lives depend on your work." "I am not taking the knowledge," Rachel said as she deleted her research files. "I am taking myself. The knowledge exists in my mind, and my mind goes where I go. If the Emperor wants to control human thoughts, then human thoughts will leave his empire." The economic impact was immediate and devastating. The humans had been the galaxy's traders and innovators. They had created shipping routes, established trade agreements, and solved logistical problems that had seemed impossible. Without them, the complex web of galactic commerce began to unravel. Minister Caldron of the Trade Federation sent urgent messages to the Emperor. "Your Majesty, the humans are calling in their debts. Every loan, every favor, every piece of technology they shared is being withdrawn. Our economic projections show a complete collapse within months. Let them take their toys," the Emperor replied. "We will build better ones." But building better technology proved impossible without the humans who had designed the original systems. The quantum communication networks that connected thousands of worlds had been built using human innovations. The mining equipment that extracted resources from dead worlds used human engineering. The medical systems that kept billions of beings healthy relied on human research. As the evacuation continued, alien species began to realize what they were losing. The humans were not just workers or traders. They were the ones who saw possibilities where others saw problems. They were the ones who asked questions that no one else thought to ask. They were the ones who refused to accept that something was impossible. Captain Lavra Griffin commanded the rear guard of the human fleet. Her ships were the last to leave Imperial space, making sure that every human settlement had been evacuated. As she prepared to follow the main fleet into the unknown, she received a final transmission from the Empire. "This is Commander Vexenol of the Imperial Border Patrol. You are ordered to return to your assigned positions immediately. You cannot survive outside the galaxy. There are no resources, no protection, no hope." "We will manage," Lavra replied. "We always have." "You are fools," the alien commander said. "You are throwing away everything for pride." "No," Lavra said as her ships turned toward the galactic rim. "We are throwing away nothing for everything. You just do not understand the difference." The last human ship left Imperial space exactly 28 days after the Emperor's ultimatum. They disappeared into the void between galaxies, leaving behind a civilization that was about to learn the true cost of their departure. The silence was the first thing everyone noticed. For over a century, human voices had been part of the galactic communication network. Human traders had called out prices in the markets. Human engineers had discussed technical problems across the networks. Human doctors had shared medical discoveries with colleagues on distant worlds. Now there was nothing. Emperor Vexthara stood in his throne room and looked out at the galaxy he ruled. The reports on his desk should have made him happy. Every human had left Imperial space. Every human ship had disappeared beyond the galactic rim. Every human settlement had been abandoned. The chaos was gone, but something was wrong. The silence was not peaceful. It was empty. The first crisis hit the Corathan Mining Consortium on the third day after the human departure. The massive excavation equipment that dug deep into dead worlds suddenly stopped working. The quantum extractors that could pull rare metals from the core of planets went silent. The processing plants that turned raw materials into useful products shut down one by one. "What is happening?" demanded Minister Zektar as he stood in the control room of the largest mining station. The room was filled with alien technicians, who stared at screens showing nothing but error messages. "The maintenance systems are failing," reported his chief engineer. "The quantum extractors need daily calibration. The humans designed them, and only humans knew how to keep them running." "Then call the human engineers back," the minister ordered. "Sir, the humans are gone, all of them. They took their knowledge. With them, Minister Zektar felt something cold in his stomach. Find the technical manuals, find the repair guides, find something that tells us how to fix these machines. The chief engineer looked uncomfortable. Sir, the humans said the technology was licensed, not sold. They took all the documentation when they left. We have the machines, but we do not have the knowledge to maintain them. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. The medical world of Sanctuary had been the center of galactic healthcare for 50 years. Human doctors had worked alongside alien healers to develop treatments for diseases that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. The quantum medical scanners that could see inside living bodies without causing harm had been a human invention. The nanoscale surgical robots that could repair damage at the cellular level had been built by human engineers. Dr. Veltara, a Valderon physician, stood in her empty laboratory and tried to understand what had happened. The machines were still there, but they were no longer working. The quantum scanners showed nothing but static. The surgical robots had stopped responding to commands. The gene therapy equipment that had saved millions of lives was dead. Can we not simply reverse engineer the technology? Asked the hospital administrator. The humans did not just take the machines, Dr. Veltara replied. They took the knowledge of how to think about the problems these machines solve. We can see what they built, but we cannot understand why they built it that way. The communication network was next to fail. The quantum relays that allowed instant communication across thousands of light years had been designed by human engineers. The elegant solutions that made such communication possible required constant maintenance and adjustment. Without human technicians, the network began to break down. Ambassador Thailara of the Epsilon Collective tried to send a message to her homeworld and received only static. The communication officer at the embassy shook his head. The quantum relay is offline. We cannot reach anyone beyond this system. How long until it is repaired? She asked. We do not know how to repair it, the officer replied. The humans built it, and only humans understood how it worked. We have been trying to contact their engineers for 3 days, but they are all gone. The ambassador felt a growing sense of panic. Surely someone must know how these systems work. The humans could not have been the only ones who understood quantum communication. They were not the only ones who understood the theory, the officer explained. But they were the only ones who could make it work in practice. There is a difference between knowing how something should work and knowing how to make it actually work. The economic collapse was swift and total. The humans had not just been participants in galactic trade. They had been the architects of the entire system. The shipping routes that connected different star systems had been mapped by human explorers. The insurance protocols that allowed species to trade with strangers had been developed by human economists. The currency exchange mechanisms that let different civilizations conduct business had been created by human financial experts. Without these systems, trade between species became almost impossible. The Zentari could not sell their artwork to the Valderons because there was no way to establish a fair exchange rate. The Korathians could not buy food from the agricultural worlds because the shipping routes were no longer maintained. The medical supplies that kept billions of beings healthy could not be transported because the insurance systems had collapsed. Minister Caldron of the Trade Federation sent desperate messages to Emperor Vexthara. Your Majesty, the economic projections are catastrophic. Trade volume has dropped by 70% in just 1 week. Without the humans, the entire galactic economy is collapsing. Temporary difficulties, the Emperor replied. We will adapt. We will find new solutions. But adaptation proved impossible. The humans had not just provided services. They had provided a way of thinking about problems that no other species had developed. Their approach to engineering, their willingness to experiment, their ability to find creative solutions to complex problems had become integral to galactic civilization. The agricultural world of Greenland Prime had fed half the galaxy for 30 years. The massive atmospheric processors that maintained the perfect climate for growing crops had been designed by human engineers. The soil enhancement systems that could make any planet suitable for farming had been a human innovation. To crop rotation algorithms that maximized food production had been developed by human scientists. Chief Agricultural Officer Muntara watched in horror as the atmospheric processors began to fail. The delicate balance of gases that kept the planet habitable was shifting. The soil enhancement systems were breaking down. The automated farming equipment was malfunctioning. "How long do we have?" she asked her chief technician. "Without the atmospheric processors, maybe 6 months before the planet becomes uninhabitable," he replied. "Without the soil enhancement systems, maybe 1 year before crop production stops entirely. And without the humans, we do not know how to maintain any of these systems. We can follow the basic operating procedures, but when something goes wrong, we have no idea how to fix it." Even the Empire's military was affected. The point defense systems that protected major installations from attack had been designed by human engineers. The tactical analysis computers that helped plan military operations had been built using human software. The intelligence networks that provided early warning of threats had been established by human agents. General Korthagen stood in the war room of the imperial capital and looked at screens that showed nothing but empty space. "Where are our scout ships?" he demanded. "Where are our intelligence reports? Where are our early warning systems?" "The humans maintained most of our intelligence networks," his aide replied. "They had contacts throughout the galaxy and systems for gathering information that we do not fully understand. Without them, we are fighting blind." "Then we will develop our own intelligence systems," the general said. "Sir, we have been trying. But the humans did not just have better technology. They had better methods. They could analyze patterns and make connections that we cannot see. They could predict enemy movements and identify threats before they became dangerous." The reports kept coming. The transportation systems that moved beings and goods between worlds were failing. The energy distribution networks that powered entire star systems were breaking down. The waste management systems that kept populated worlds clean were malfunctioning. Every aspect of galactic civilization had been touched by human innovation. The humans had been the ones who saw problems and found solutions. They had been the ones who connected different species and different ideas. They had been the ones who refused to accept that something was impossible. Emperor Vextara received a final report from his daughter, Chief Researcher Vexnara. "Father, we have discovered something disturbing. The humans were not just contributing to galactic civilization, they were driving it. Innovation rates have dropped by 80% since their departure. We are not just missing their technology. We are missing their creativity." The Emperor sat alone in his throne room and looked out at a galaxy that was slowly dying. The humans had been chaos, but chaos was where new ideas came from. They had been unpredictable, but unpredictability was what drove progress. They had been independent, but independence was what made innovation possible. For the first time in his long life, Emperor Vextara began to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. 6 months had passed since the humans disappeared beyond the galactic rim. Emperor Vextara tried to maintain his composure as he read the daily reports, but each one brought worse news than the last. The galaxy was not adapting to human absence. It was collapsing. The Korathian Mining Consortium had completely shut down operations. Without the quantum extractors working, they could not reach the rare metals deep inside dead planets. Without those metals, the factories that built starships and space stations had stopped production. Without new ships, the transportation network that connected thousands of worlds was breaking apart. "Your Majesty," Minister Zektar reported via quantum communication, "though even that signal was weak and filled with static, we have tried everything. We brought in the best engineers from 12 different species. None of them can understand how the human extraction systems work. The technology is too advanced, too different from anything we know." Emperor Vextara felt frustration building inside him. Surely the humans did not invent entirely new laws of physics. The machines must operate on principles we can understand. "That is just it, Your Majesty. The principles are familiar, but the application is not. The humans thought about problems in ways that no other species has developed. They saw connections we cannot see. They found solutions we cannot imagine. On the medical world of Sanctuary, the situation was even worse. Without human-designed equipment, hospitals throughout the galaxy were reverting to treatments that had been abandoned decades ago. Diseases that had been easily curable were becoming deadly again. The mortality rate on Sanctuary alone had increased by 300%. Dr. Veltara sent desperate reports to the Imperial capital. We are losing patients every day to conditions that should be simple to treat. The quantum medical scanners are completely dead. The nanoscale surgical robots have shut down. The gene therapy equipment is nothing more than expensive decoration now. What about the research data? Asked the hospital administrator. Surely the humans left some records of their medical discoveries. They took everything, Dr. Veltara replied. Every research file, every treatment protocol, every piece of diagnostic software. But even if they had left the data, we would not know how to use it. Human medicine was not just about the technology. It was about their approach to thinking about diseases and treatments. The communication breakdown was perhaps the most visible sign of the crisis. The quantum relay network that had connected the galaxy for 50 years was failing one system at a time. Worlds that had been in constant contact for decades were now isolated and alone. Ambassador Thailara had not been able to contact her home world in 2 months. The embassy on the Imperial capital was supposed to coordinate trade and diplomacy between her people and the Empire, but without communications, she had no idea what was happening in either location. We need to send a ship, she told her staff. A physical messenger to carry news between worlds. Her aide looked uncomfortable. Ambassador, the nearest functioning shipyard is 8 systems away, and they have a waiting list of 3 years for new vessels. The existing ships are all being used for emergency supply runs to worlds that are running out of food and medicine. The food crisis was spreading rapidly. The agricultural world of Greenland Prime had been feeding billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. Now the atmospheric processes were failing and crop production was dropping every day. The soil enhancement systems that had made barren worlds fertile were breaking down. The automated farming equipment that had maximized food production was malfunctioning beyond repair. Chief Agricultural Officer Memtara watched her planet slowly die. The skies that had been clear blue for 30 years were now gray with atmospheric imbalance. The fields that had produced enough food for half the galaxy were turning brown and barren. How much food do we have in storage? She asked her logistics coordinator. Maybe 4 months of full production equivalent, came the reply. But that assumes we can transport it to the worlds that need it, and the shipping network is mostly down. What about rationing? We could stretch it to 8 months with severe rationing, but that would mean cutting food supplies to emergency levels. Billions of beings would still starve. The Empire's military situation was becoming desperate. The early warning systems that had protected the galaxy from external threats had gone silent. The intelligence networks that had prevented conflicts before they started had collapsed. The tactical analysis systems that had given Imperial forces their edge in battle were no longer functioning. General Korthagen stood in his command center and looked at star maps that showed huge blank areas where information should have been. "What do we know about the Wraith Collective?" he asked his intelligence chief. "Nothing, sir. Our monitoring stations in that sector went offline 3 weeks ago. We have no idea what they are doing or whether they are planning any aggressive actions." "What about the hive mind expansion?" "Also unknown, sir. The humans maintained most of our deep space surveillance networks. Without them, we cannot track fleet movements beyond our immediate borders." "So we are flying blind?" "Completely, sir. For all we know, hostile forces could be massing at our borders right now, and we would have no warning until they attacked." The economic situation was beyond crisis. It was complete collapse. The complex web of trade agreements, shipping routes, and financial systems that had connected thousands of worlds had been built on human innovations. without the humans to maintain and adjust these systems. They had simply stopped working. Minister Caldron of the Trade Federation delivered his weekly report to the Emperor with shaking hands. Your Majesty, interstellar commerce has dropped by 90%. Most worlds are reverting to local production of essential goods, but many cannot support their populations without imports. What about the emergency protocols? The Emperor asked. Surely we have procedures for handling economic disruption. The emergency protocols were written by humans, Minister Caldron replied. They were based on human understanding of economic systems and human approaches to problem solving. We have tried to implement them, but they do not work without the context and knowledge that the humans provided. The Emperor felt a cold realization settling over him. Are you telling me that we cannot function without the humans? I am telling you that we built our entire civilization around human innovations. They were not just participants in galactic society. They were the foundation that everything else was built on. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy of species that were beginning to question Imperial leadership. The Zentari Collective had announced that they were withdrawing from several trade agreements. The Epsilon Federation was demanding emergency assistance that the Empire could not provide. The Healers Guild was threatening to secede unless medical supplies could be restored. They blame us for the human departure, reported Imperial Intelligence Chief Nardala. They say that if we had not forced the humans to leave, none of this would have happened. The humans were chaos, Emperor Vextara insisted, but his voice lacked the conviction it had held 6 months ago. They were unpredictable and dangerous. Perhaps, his intelligence chief replied carefully. But chaos and unpredictability may have been exactly what the galaxy needed. Without them, everything has become stagnant. Nothing works. Nothing improves. Nothing grows. The Emperor's throne room, once filled with the confident voices of advisors and officials conducting the business of ruling a galaxy, had become a place of whispered fears and desperate reports. Every day brought news of another system failure, another crisis that could not be solved, another piece of the galactic civilization breaking apart. What about the research projects? The Emperor asked his daughter, Chief Researcher Vexnara. Surely our scientists can develop new solutions to replace what the humans took. Vexnara looked tired and defeated. Father, we have tried. We have gathered the best minds from every species in the Empire. But we keep running into the same problem. We can understand the science, but we cannot think like the humans thought. They approached problems from directions we would never consider. They made connections we cannot see. Give me an example. The atmospheric processors on Greenland Prime. We know they work by manipulating gas concentrations in the atmosphere. We understand the basic principles. But the humans designed them to self-adjust based on thousands of variables that we never would have thought to include. Weather patterns, soil chemistry, plant growth rates, even the migration patterns of native insects. They saw the planet as one connected system instead of separate pieces. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. And we cannot learn to think that way? We have been trying for 6 months. Our thought patterns, our approaches to problem solving, our ways of understanding the universe are different from theirs. We can copy their technology if we have the blueprints, but we cannot recreate their creativity. That night, Emperor Vextara stood alone on the balcony of his palace and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the galaxy, the humans were building something new. They had taken their chaos and their unpredictability and their refusal to accept limits, and they had disappeared into the void. For the first time since the crisis began, the Emperor allowed himself to wonder what the humans were doing out Theon year after the human exodus. Emperor Vexthara sat in his throne room reading reports that painted a picture of total systemic failure. The Galactic Empire was dying. Food production had dropped to critical levels. Medical care had reverted to primitive methods. Communication between worlds happened only when ships could physically carry messages. Trade had collapsed to the point where entire sectors were isolated and struggling to survive, but the report that changed everything came from the Empire's deep space monitoring stations. Commander Veltara's message was brief but shocking. Your Majesty, we are detecting massive energy signatures from beyond the galactic rim. The humans are building something out there, and it is bigger than anything we have ever seen. The images were grainy and unclear, captured by sensors that were operating at the edge of their range. But they showed construction on a scale that defied understanding. The humans were not just surviving in the void between galaxies, they were creating entire worlds. How is this possible? The Emperor demanded as he stared at the images on his screen. There are no resources in the void. No planets, no stars, no materials to build with. We do not know, Commander Veltara replied. But the energy readings suggest they have developed technology that we cannot begin to understand. They appear to be converting raw energy into matter and building artificial structures that rival natural planets in size. The Emperor felt something cold settling in his stomach. What kind of structures? Space habitats, manufacturing facilities, what appear to be entire cities floating in the void. And sir, there is something else. We are detecting quantum signatures that suggest they have developed faster than light travel that is far more advanced than anything in the galaxy. More disturbing reports were coming from the galaxy's edge. 3 different species had sent secret diplomatic missions beyond the rim to make contact with the humans. What they found when they returned challenged everything the Empire thought. It knew about what was possible. Ambassador Creolon of the Zentari Collective had been one of the first to make the dangerous journey into the void. When he returned, his report sent shockwaves through the imperial capital. Your Majesty, I have seen the human settlements. They are not just surviving out there. They are thriving beyond anything we could have imagined. Describe what you saw, the Emperor commanded. Cities that float in empty space without any visible means of support. Manufacturing plants that create materials we have never seen before. Transportation systems that move people and goods instantly across distances that should take weeks to travel. And the humans themselves? The ambassador paused, clearly struggling to find words. What about the humans? They have changed. Without the constraints of imperial regulation, without the need to conform to galactic standards, they have become something we can barely recognize. They think faster, build bigger, solve problems we did not even know existed. The Emperor's advisors brought more reports. The Epsilon Collective had sent a trade mission to the human settlements and returned with technologies that seemed impossible. Energy sources that produced power from empty space. Materials that were stronger than anything known to galactic science. Medical treatments that could extend life far beyond natural limits. They offered to share their knowledge, reported Trade Minister Caldron, but only with species that left the Empire and joined their confederation. Confederation? The Emperor asked. Yes, Your Majesty. The humans are not building an empire like ours. They are creating a voluntary alliance of species that choose to work together. Any race that wants to join is welcome, but they must leave imperial space first. The economic implications were staggering. The Human Confederation was offering trade agreements that were far more beneficial than anything the Empire could provide. They had solved the problems of interstellar transportation, communication, and resource distribution that had plagued the galaxy for centuries. Species throughout the Empire were beginning to question why they remained under imperial control. The Corothian Mining Consortium formally petitioned for permission to establish trade relations with the humans. The medical world of Sanctuary requested authorization to send a delegation to study human healing techniques. They are trying to steal our member species, General Corthagan reported during the daily military briefing. 17 different worlds have submitted requests to leave the Empire and join the Human Confederation. Denied, the Emperor said. Immediately, all of them, sir, we may not have a choice. The Healers Guild has announced that they will secede from the Empire whether we approve or not. They say that staying means watching billions of beings die from diseases the humans could easily cure. The Emperor felt his control slipping away. Send the fleet, force them to remain. With what ships? The general asked. Half our fleet is non-operational due to maintenance problems we cannot solve. The other half is needed to maintain order in sectors that are already in revolt. The final blow came when the Empire's sensors detected a massive human fleet approaching from the void. But this was not an invasion force. It was something far more threatening to the Emperor's authority. It was a rescue mission. Admiral Carter's voice crackled through the communication system. But she was not addressing the Emperor. She was speaking directly to the species of the galaxy. "This is Admiral Carter of the Human Colonial Fleet. We are receiving distress signals from across the galaxy. We are prepared to offer humanitarian assistance to any species that requires it." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of worlds sent desperate pleas for help. Medical supplies for plague-stricken populations. Engineering assistance for failing infrastructure. Food shipments for starving colonies. The humans responded with the same efficiency they had shown during their evacuation. But now they were helping others instead of leaving? "They are violating our sovereignty," the Emperor raged. "They have no right to operate in Imperial space." "Your Majesty," his daughter Vexnara said quietly, "they are not operating in Imperial space. They are working with species that have formally requested their assistance. And sir, those species are leaving the Empire to join the Human Confederation." The Emperor watched helplessly as his empire crumbled. World after world announced their intention to secede and join the humans. The Zentari Collective was first, followed quickly by the Epsilon Federation. The Healers Guild brought dozens of medical worlds with them. Even the Korathian Mining Consortium abandoned their imperial contracts to work with human engineers who could actually maintain their equipment. "Why?" the Emperor asked his daughter. "Why are they choosing chaos over order?" "Because what you call chaos, they call growth," Vexnara replied. "What you call order, they call stagnation." The humans did not just bring technology to the galaxy. They brought the ability to change, to adapt, to become something better than what we were. But the Empire brought stability. We brought peace. We brought protection from external threats. Yes, Father. But we also brought limits. We told species what they could and could not do. We regulated their development. We controlled their growth. The humans offered something we never could. What? Freedom to become whatever they wanted to be? The Emperor stood alone in his throne room as reports continued to arrive. The Human Confederation was growing every day. Their technology was advancing at a rate that seemed impossible. Their cities in the void were expanding beyond the edge of the galaxy itself. But perhaps the most devastating report came from the humans themselves. They had sent a message to the Emperor, not as enemies or conquerors, but as former neighbors. Saying goodbye. "Emperor Vexthara," Admiral Carter's voice said from the communication system, "we want you to know that we bear no ill will toward you or your remaining subjects. You believe that order and stability were the highest virtues. We believe that growth and freedom were more important. Neither of us was entirely wrong, but neither of us was entirely right either." The Admiral's image appeared on the screen, and the Emperor could see that she was standing on the bridge of a ship that was unlike anything in the Imperial fleet. The technology visible behind her was clearly far advanced beyond galactic standards. "We learned much during our time in the galaxy," she continued. "We learned about cooperation and diplomacy. We learned about the value of diverse perspectives. We learned about the dangers of isolation. But we also learned that there is no single right way for a civilization to develop. You chose to preserve what you had built. We chose to build something new. Both choices have value, but they are not compatible. We wish you well in maintaining your empire. We will be busy building our confederation." The message ended, and Emperor Vexthara was left alone with the realization that he had made the greatest mistake in galactic history. He had seen the humans as a threat to the order he had worked so hard to create. But in forcing them away, he had revealed that his order was not strength. It was weakness. The humans had not been chaos. They had been evolution. They had not been a threat to civilization. They had been its future. And now that future was building itself in the void between galaxies, growing beyond anything the Empire could imagine, reaching for pause.